Right here. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so um, during the previous terms, we were working on, sorry, we were working on some little issues, well, not little issues, a lot of issues related to the chapter number 1, chapter number 2 about the project, in which we have been working on, or related to chapter number 1, what is going to be the introductory part. So it's going to be just the overview about what you are going to create inside the project and what you're going to show the reader. Remember, we're not going to write a project just because we're writing something or just because we want to get a grade. No, it is because we are going to show the world what we can do at a research level. Boom, that's it, right? So your project is good and that's it, right? So you're going to show the truth behind those problem statements you have created. Therefore, talking about the problem statement, you created the problem statement, then you created the purpose, right? Or the justification. I forgot. Well, anyway, then you created the research questions, the objectives, the limitations, and the ethical considerations. All that is clear, okay? What is this? Is this? No, is this? No, sorry. This one. Okay. So, chapter number 2 was related to the backbone, related to the theory, right? And therefore, we're working on something relevant right here that is going to be just the theoretical framework, number 1, the conceptual framework, number 2, and the literature review. Taking into account that the theoretical framework is how to use the theory inside the context, right? So, how the theory validates your problem statement of the problem, how the conceptual framework is going to give you the reality of those concepts, right? And how the literature review, meaning the studies, are going to fortify your study, are going to tell, yes, this project has been developed in this context, or no, there is no information about that. And that is why we have created the categories, right? In order to say, so like a part 1 is this, part 2 is this, and both parts together are going to give us more light to follow, right? And that's all. That's all the structure related to the there's 2 chapters. In this part, we're going to see, for example, here from Professor Nelson Silva from Asia Tech College, something related to the research, the chapter number 3, that is going to be the research methodology. Okay, so beginning with this, we're going to take into account 5 fundamental issues when talking about the methodology. Okay. Number 1, we're going to talk about the research design, but before that, we have to talk about the research nature, the nature of the research, right? The design, and we're going to talk about the research approach. Got it? Then we're going to say, or we're going to talk about the responses of the study. What is that? So, population, the participants, and the sample. Then we're going to talk about the research instrument, right? So, nice. What are those instruments? So, for example, we have an observation field notes. If we have a reflection journal, if we have, for example, questionnaires, in the case if it is going to be mixed approach, or if it is going to be a quantitative approach, if it is going to be just an interview, but which kind of interview? If it is going to be your structure, semi-structure, partially structured, or something like that. So that's it. Then we're going to talk about the data gathering procedure. How are you going to collect that information? Therefore, what is going to be the chronogram, and in which way are you going to implement these instruments? And then the treatment of the data, meaning the ways for you to analyze the data. And that's all, right? Okay, let's start with this. So, here, okay. Okay, nicely done. Let's take into account this. So when talking about the research methodology, we're going to talk about we're going to create a brief explanation of what the chapter is going to be about. Remember, every time you're going to create an introductory paragraph for each chapter, you're going to show what is going to be inside the chapter, right? And that's all, right? Now, what to take into account here for this introductory paragraph. So for this introductory paragraph, so you're going to create, as you see right here, the discussion on research methodology of the study, right? The subjects, the sampling technique, the research instrument, procedure of data gathering, and the statistical treatment that will be used for accurate data analysis and interpretation, right? Okay, here it says statistical, but sometimes it is going to be just related qualitative treatment, right? Okay, I'm going to explain one by one this. Okay, so now the research methodology of the study. So if it is going to be qualitative or quantitative, right? Or if it is going to be mixed, meaning quantitative and quantitative at the same time. The subjects, right? Or the population. So for example, the population must be what you have done or what you have talked about. Is going to be just related to students from the foreign languages bachelor degree, right? And then the sampling technique. So how are you going to select these students? If it is going to be just in a random way, if it is going to be just in a voluntary basis, at a convenience basis, or what, right? So we need to take into account that. And we're going to see some other issues. I'm going to show you the book for us to talk about more in depth about this. Okay, all this term, we're going to be creating this research methodology part. Okay, now last semester you saw something related to the research methodology, right? So in which we're going to say, for example, what is going to be the method that is going to be used. But before that, what is going to be the approach? So if it is going to be qualitative or quantitative, and then the methodology or the method, if it is going to be, for example, descriptive, correlation, experimental, documentary analysis, right? And even better, if it is going to be just case study, phenomenology, narrative, what is the other one? Action research, right? So once you have decided that, we need to take into account, or we need to read, or we need to start thinking about the subjects, respondents, or the respondents to the study, right? So what are going to be just the subjects? So the subjects are going to be those students, or those people, sorry, that are going to be part inside of the study, that are going to be investigated inside the study, okay? And mostly it's going to be like that, okay? But we have to divide this into the different these different perspectives. Number one, we're going to talk about the population. So the population could be, for example, let's say students from Universidad de Pamplona. But we need to take into account that if we're going to talk about the whole students from Universidad de Pamplona, we're talking about like 15,000 to 20,000 students, right? So that is going to be just the whole population. But if we're going to be just focused on a very specific population, let's say we're going to talk about students from the bachelor degree of foreign languages, English, French. Nice. But still, we're talking about around 600 students inside the program, right? The degree. Okay, nice. Can we go deeper, or can we limit that? Oh, yes. Let's say we're going to be focused on the third semester students. Now we're talking about something related to, I don't know, 80 students. So we need to clarify which is going to be our population. And in the real case, the population right here is going to be just students from bachelor degree of foreign languages, English, French. Now the participants are going to be just inside one group. Let's say third semester students from group B. Nice. Now you have limited your research. The sample right here is going to be just different. It's going to be just those particular students or those particular people that are going to make part of your study, right? So how is that? Let's say we are going to work with a group, and this group contains like 25 students. But are you going to interview 25 students? No, right? Okay. Are you going to observe 25 students? So meaning that we're going to observe 25 different reactions, attitudes, aptitudes, skills, language level. I don't know. So that's it. Number one. Number two. So there are some authors that they state that you're going to only use the 60% of your participants. Let's say, so if you have 20 students in one classroom, let's say that the 60% is going to be around 12 students to be observed. Let's say 10, right? So you can interview 10 people, you can observe 10 people, you can follow 10 people, you can talk with 10 people, and the information is not going to be that huge. Remember that we're working with social sciences, and we're going to see it's going to be just attitudes and behaviors and learning styles and a cognitive process, and that's it, right? So this could be measurable, but just at a qualitative way, okay? But how to decide these students right here, or something like the sample size? Okay, there's something that is called the Logans Formula, right? For you to determine your sample size, right? So let's say right here, we're going to use a little bit of math. Teacher, we're not good at math. Nah, this is easy, trust me. Okay, so let's say right here that we have, for example, N, that is going N capital letter, that is going to be just the population size, and the margin of error, E, denotes the allowed probability of committing an error in selecting a small representative of the population. The sample N lowercase can be obtained by the formula. So we're going to say, this is the number of population, let's say 20 students divided in this part. So let's say 1 plus, once again, 20 plus the error, the margin of error, that is going to be basically 1, right? And this at the square. Let's see how to do this, okay? Well, practically here, you're going to try to get a short amount of those students, right? For you to start collecting data. But this is one form of taking just students, or sorry, participants, sorry, the sample at a mathematical way. Nice. I don't want to use that. Perfect. We can use the simple random sample. How is that? Okay. Let's suppose you have a list, or you have a piece of a bag, for example. I have here one, right? And you can include right here inside this box all the names of the participants, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to get 20 students, sorry, 12 students from this 20, and you start picking 1, 2, 3, 19, 20. Sorry, 11, 12. So you have selected 12 students at a random way. You don't know the names, right? So that is going to be random. As you see over here, right? You can use, for example, a bowl with some bingo balls, right? Let's suppose those bingo balls are going to be just the students. And you're going to start moving in circles the machine, right? And then you're going to drag one little ball from it, and 12 numbers, 12 participants, and that was random, right? Another idea is, for example, you're going to use the numbers of the lottery, right? I don't know, you're going to be creative in that way. So this is going to be the way in which it could work, right? So for example, let's say I'm going to use just the students who have the final number of the identification. If it is going to be just divided, if it could be divided by 2, so those are going to be mine, right? Or the other way, right? In Spanish, solo selecciono los pares o solo selecciono los impares, right? So that's it. So see that here you have your population, your participants, right? And then we're going to use just the sample. So from 12 students, we're going to use just the third part, that is going to be just 4 students. And that's it. The stratified sampling, okay? Let's read this information. So the stratified sampling is possible when it makes sense to partition the population into groups based on a factor that may influence the variable that is being measured. These groups are then called strata. An individual group is called stratum. With stratified sampling, one should, or you should, or we should, partition the population into groups, obtain simple random sample from each group, collect data on each sampling unit that was randomly sampled from each group. Okay, so here you can get different information from different groups, right? From different strata, and it may work, right? But this, in the case that you're experimenting with something, let's say from 18 students, we're going to create 3 groups. Group A is going to receive, for example, just audiovisual input. Group 2 is going to have just reading input. Group 3 is going to have audiovisual and reading input. You're going to have 3 different sources of information right here. And what you can do is to choose 1 or 2 students per stratum, right? And it works in that way, as we see right here, right? So we have, for example, the population that we have like 12 students, right? And we're going to divide this into 2 more groups, right? So let's say right here, now we're going to divide it at a random way, or if they want to create 2 groups, up to them. And then we're going to choose just 2 participants from those groups. And that's it. That's the way it works. Then we have the purposeful sampling. What is purposeful? Purposeful is if that sampling is going to give me something that I want, I'm going to use it. Offer and demand. So, as we see over here, purposive sample is a non-probability sample. Why non-probability? Because you can get any information, right? It could be positive, negative, neutral. It doesn't matter, right? That is selected based on characteristics of a population and the objective of the study. Purposeful sampling, right, is also known as judgmental selective or subjective sampling. Example, like this. Let's say I'm gonna choose just, for example, 5 women and only 1 man because I need the information in that way. But I'm going to see from, let's say, from the population, which women, or yeah, which women are going to be those representative for me, and which men is going to be just the representative for me. Let's talk about that in an ethnographical way, right? Let's say I just need 5 black women and only 1 black man, and it works, right? Because it's for you to look the sample that serves in order for you to answer your research questions. Pure and simple. And that's it, right? So this purposive could be taken as convenience, right? So for example, let's say I need 6 students. 2 students that they work at a very, very hard way, and they are top-notch students, meaning high achievers. I need 2 neutral students. They are good, but not that good, but they have capabilities, right? Very good. And we have the last 2 students that are under the average grade, right? Why? Because I need to see if they're going to behave at the same way the others behave, right? I'm just creating examples right here. Okay. After that, we're going to talk about something else that is going to be just the research instruments. Okay. So what could be the research instruments? Okay, we need to take into account right here that if we're going to talk about, we're going to decide on the what on the type of research, if it is going to be just quantitative, so we're going to use, for example, questionnaires. We can use tests, right? Mostly surveys, right? Why? Because when you're going to analyze them, they're going to give you just numbers, right? For example, you have implemented a questionnaire with 10 questions. But those questions, they're going to give you, let's say, what? Got it. You're going to give, for example, 4 choices for that question. And you're going to say 50% of the population, 50% of the interviewees, they answered that choice number 1 is going to be was the best. Let's say 25% stated that the choice number 2 was good for them, and so on, right? But if it is going to be just qualitative, so we're going to use, in this case, interviews and observations, and maybe journals, right? Why? Because we need to see attitudes. We need to see, yeah, attitudes, behaviors, learning progress, right? Everything that is not going to have anything in common with numbers, okay? So for example, interviews, okay, taking into consideration the previous the current situation, what is your point of view related to the transformation that face-to-face classes have had for them to become virtual classes? And then you're going to say, okay, I don't like it. Yes, I like it. But they are going to support their ideas, and you need to interpret those ideas in favor of what? In favor to answer your research questions, and in favor to answer to the needs established in the statement of the problem. That's all. Okay. On the other hand, we have the data gathering procedure, meaning how to collect that. Okay, meaning that once you have selected the data collection instruments, so how are you going to collect that data? So let's read this paragraph, and let's say identify your sources of data. If a questionnaire will be used, explain what kind of questionnaire, because there are different kinds of questionnaires, and how it will be constructed, from if it is original, how it is pre-tested, distributed, retrieved, and collated. Example. Now, meaning, how are you going to create that? So, number one, how do you create the questions, right? Based on what? Have you used any other questionnaire for you to create yours? Are you adapting your questionnaire based on someone else's information? What? So you need to specify that, right? Let's continue. Thus, your procedures may include construction of the questionnaire. What I told you. This is going to be a questionnaire about 10 questions. Nice. Based on what? Focused on what? What do you want to achieve with every question? Right? So that's the thing that I want you to think about. Distribution. How are you going to distribute this what? This questions. Oh, easy. I'm going to create a chronogram, very important, right? And by this data, I'm going to implement the questionnaire, an interview, a test, some observations. That's it. How are you going to retrieve the information, right? How are you going to present the data? How are you going to interpret the data, right? Okay, this is going to be just the statistical treatment of data. It's going to be just for the what? The quantitative data. But let's see this. So, for example, specify the statistical treatment you will use for interpreting your data and why they're necessary. Also, include the scale or verbal interpretation for the statistical process of your data. Mention the name of the office or agency or the person taking charge of it. Well, this is going to be just, for example, if you want to interpret the data that you got from, I don't know, let's say people that are interviewed on the street, right? Some of these interviews or surveys that, for example, Canal Caracol or Canal RCN, they usually do inside their programs, right? So that's it. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop right here because there are some like a less than 7 minutes for me to restart the connection. Sorry. And that's it. Okay, guys, I know that by now you have thousands of questions to ask related to this part, but I don't expect you to understand, to fully understand this topic. Why? Because here I'm just giving you an overview of what we're going to see this term. Okay, so now you know which are going to be just the principles that we're going to study during this term. I'm going to use the book from Christensen and Berg Johnson for me to explain just the first part that I would like you to do. Next class, I would like you to look information about the approach, but right now we're going to see the methodology, the nature of the study, right? Guys, I want to restart the connection, because there is like 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes for us to keep on working on this. Okay, on this connection. So I'm going to restart the connection, and we're going to see the book for us to have a better guidance. Okay, and that's all. So refresh this, now connect again to this link, and that's all. See you in 1 minute.